Fighter challenged skinny girl to a fight as a joke. What happened next shocked everyone. Bradley Thompson was at the peak of his arrogance when he saw the slender young girl enroll at the academy. His laughter echoed through the hall as he watched the newcomer fill out the registration forms. That's when he decided to do what he always did. With newcomers, he deemed unfit for his elite gym. Bradley strode toward the reception desk, his massive frame drawing everyone's attention. "Miss, are you sure you're in the right place?" he asked loudly, making sure everyone heard. "This is a serious martial arts academy, not a dance class." The girl looked up from the papers. Her brown hair was tied in a simple ponytail, and her calm gaze contrasted with the tension building in the room. "I'm sure," she replied, showing no sign of intimidation. Bradley let out a booming laugh that made several people pause their training to watch the scene unfold. "You know what? I'll make you an offer. How about a friendly spar right now? That way you'll see if you really have the guts for this," he said, gesturing dramatically. "It'll be easier than fighting a child." The other students gathered, forming a circle. Some whispered among themselves, visibly uncomfortable with the situation. The academy's owner, Master Johnson, tried to intervene from the back of the room, but the distance kept him from reaching them in time. The girl carefully capped her pen and looked straight at Bradley. There was something in her eyes that made his smirk falter for a moment. "I accept," she said, with a calmness that chilled the air. "What was that?" Bradley blinked, surprised by her response. "I said I accept your offer," she repeated, standing up from the chair, "but I'd prefer it to be on the main mat in front of everyone." The confidence in her voice brought an eerie silence over the gym. Bradley felt something uneasy stir in his chest, but his arrogance won out. "Perfect. I hope your health insurance is up to date," he said, trying to regain his mocking tone. As they walked to the center of the mat, the girl began warming up. Her movements were fluid, precise, almost hypnotic. Every stretch revealed years of training no one there had expected to see. Bradley stopped laughing. There was something familiar about her motions, but he couldn't place it. The way she moved her arms, her perfect stance, her controlled breathing, it all triggered a memory just out of reach. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. "What was your name again?" Bradley asked, adjusting his training gloves. "Emily Parker," she replied, removing an old necklace from her neck and carefully tucking it into her bag. That simple gesture made Bradley's throat go dry. There was something terribly familiar about that necklace, but he couldn't connect the fragmented memories surfacing in his mind. Emily took her fighting stance. Her feet aligned with millimeter precision, her arms found the perfect angle, and her breathing became nearly silent. It was like watching a flawless machine preparing to engage. "My goodness," whispered Mrs. Wilson, one of the academy's oldest students. "How long have you been training, girl?" "Long enough," Emily replied, never taking her eyes off Bradley. The first move was Bradley's. He lunged with a straight punch, confident his strength and size would intimidate his opponent. But Emily simply wasn't there when his fist cut through the air. She had moved with a fluidity that defied physics. Bradley turned around, confused, and found her 3 steps to his left, as if she had teleported. "How did you—" he began to ask, but was interrupted by another attack, this time a left hook. Again, Emily wasn't there. And again she appeared in another spot, as if she could predict exactly where and when he would strike. The crowd that had gathered around the mat was mesmerized. They had never seen anything like it. Bradley, known for his speed despite his size, seemed to be fighting the wind. "This isn't possible," he muttered, starting to sweat even though he hadn't landed a single hit. Emily suddenly stopped and stared at him. For the first time since the fight began, she spoke. "Bradley, do you remember a girl you humiliated at a junior championship 15 years ago?" The words hit Bradley like a punch to the gut. He instinctively stepped back, his eyes widening with growing horror. "What?" he managed to stammer. "It was in Portland, the state junior championship. You were 11, I was 13. You made me cry in front of 300 people," Emily continued, her voice still calm, but now laced with a tension that made the air feel heavy. Bradley's legs trembled. The memories he had buried 15 years ago came rushing back like an avalanche. The packed arena, the thin, shy girl, his laughter echoing over the speakers when she stumbled during her demonstration. "No, you can't be," he whispered. "Emily Parker. But back then I was Emily Wilson. I changed my last name after my parents divorced 2 years after that championship," she said, stepping toward him. The crowd around them was utterly silent. Master Johnson, who had finally managed to get close to the mat, paled at the sound of that name. His hands began to shake as old memories surfaced. "Emily Wilson," the master repeated under his breath. "Master Rodriguez's daughter." Mrs. Wilson, standing beside the master, let out a gasp of recognition. "The girl who disappeared after that terrible championship," she said, covering her mouth with her hands. Bradley was frozen. The girl he had publicly humiliated, mocking her weight and her ridiculous technique, was standing before him, transformed into something he could never have imagined. You trained all these years?" he asked, his voice choked. "Every single day," Emily replied. 15 years, 6 hours a day without exception. You planted a seed that day, Bradley, and now you can see how it's grown." The atmosphere in the dojo had become suffocating. Some of the more sensitive students began to step back, feeling the emotional tension radiating from the mat like heat waves. "Emily, I was just a kid," Bradley tried to explain. "So was I," she answered. "But you chose to destroy me publicly, in front of my family, my friends, my teachers. You made me feel like I didn't belong there." Bradley remembered now. He remembered every cruel word he had said. He remembered exaggerating her movements to make the crowd laugh. He remembered her running off the mat in tears. "I didn't know that," he started to say. "That I would take it seriously," Emily interrupted. "That I'd spend the next 15 years of my life preparing for this moment?" She began to move again, but this time it wasn't to dodge. It was to attack. Her movements were so fast Bradley could barely follow them. The first strike hit his right shoulder with surgical precision. It wasn't strong enough to seriously hurt him, but it landed exactly where it would make his arm go numb for a few seconds. The second strike hit his left thigh, making him stumble and nearly fall. Again, it wasn't a blow meant to cause permanent damage, but rather to demonstrate absolute control. "Stop!" shouted Master Johnson, trying to step onto the mat. But Emily ignored him. The third strike was a light tap to Bradley's neck, temporarily robbing him of his ability to speak. 15 years, she said, as Bradley struggled to regain his balance. 15 years thinking about what I'd say when we met again. Bradley finally steadied himself and looked at her with a mix of terror and admiration. "You want revenge," he managed to say hoarsely. "No," Emily replied, and her answer took everyone by surprise. "Revenge would be too simple. I want something much harder." She stopped attacking and stepped back, keeping her guard up but clearly pausing the confrontation. "I want you to understand," she continued. "I want you to feel a fraction of what I felt that day, and I want you to carry it for the rest of your life like I have." It was then that a hoarse, fragile voice echoed from the entrance of the dojo. "Bradley, what's going on here?" Everyone turned to see an elderly woman with graying hair and tired eyes slowly walking toward the mat. It was Mrs. Harrison, Bradley's mother, who occasionally visited the dojo to watch her son's training. "Mom?" Bradley said, clearly confused by her presence at that moment. Mrs. Harrison froze when her eyes met Emily's. Her face lost all color, and she clutched her chest as if she'd just been startled. "Emily?" she whispered. "Emily Wilson?" "You know me?" Emily asked, finally lowering her guard. "Know you?" Mrs. Harrison repeated, tears welling in her eyes. "I held you in my arms when you were a baby. I was your mother's best friend." The silence that followed was deafening. Bradley looked from his mother to Emily, trying to process this new information. "What do you mean, Mom?" he asked. "Rachel Wilson was my best friend since we were teenagers," Mrs. Harrison explained, her voice trembling with emotion. "Our families were very close. You and Emily used to play together when you were little." Emily's legs nearly gave out. She vaguely remembered a time when she played with a blonde, green-eyed boy, but she had never connected that child to the monster who had humiliated her years later. But how is that possible? She asked. After that terrible championship, Rachel called me crying, Mrs. Harrison continued, now slowly stepping onto the mat. She said you were traumatized, that you refused to train, that you woke up crying in the middle of the night. Bradley felt as if the ground were crumbling beneath him. He now remembered his own mother's tears back then, but had never understood why. Rachel asked me to keep my distance, Mrs. Harrison went on. She said she couldn't look at me anymore without remembering what Bradley had done to you. Our 30-year friendship ended that day. Mum, why did you never tell me this? Bradley asked, his voice barely a whisper. Because I was ashamed, she replied, tears now streaming down her face. Ashamed of what my son had become, ashamed I couldn't teach him to be a better person. Emily was shaking. All the certainty she had built over the years, all the anger that had fueled her training, everything was being called into question by this revelation. Where is my mother now? She asked. Mrs. Harrison hesitated, looking first at Emily, then at Bradley. She moved to Tampa soon after the divorce, but Emily, she fell very ill a few years ago. Heart problems. The doctor said it was years of built-up stress. The words hit Emily like lightning. She remembered how her mother had changed after that championship, how she had become more withdrawn, sadder, how the smile had vanished from her face. Is she... She began to ask. She's alive, Mrs. Harrison said quickly, but fragile, very fragile. Bradley could no longer stand. He sank heavily onto the mat, burying his head in his hands. I destroyed 2 families, he murmured. My God, I destroyed 2 whole families. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Emily looked at him, and for the first time in 15 years, she felt something beyond anger. There was something pathetically human about that big, strong man falling apart over his own actions. Get up, she said firmly. Bradley lifted his head, surprised. What? I said get up, Emily repeated. We're not done yet. Mrs. Harrison tried to step forward, but Master Johnson gently held her arm. Let them work this out, he said quietly. This needs to be settled. Bradley rose slowly, his red eyes fixed on Emily. What do you want from me? He asked. I want you to finish what you started, she replied. 15 years ago, you challenged me to a fight. I lost that day. Today, I want my rematch. Emily, this is madness, Master Johnson said. You're both emotionally shaken. This isn't the time for... It's exactly the time, Emily interrupted. I've spent 15 years preparing for this day. If I don't do it now, I'll never move forward. Bradley looked at her, then at his mother, then at the expectant faces around the mat. What if I refuse? He asked. Then you'll stay the coward you've always been, Emily shot back without hesitation. The taunt had its intended effect. Bradley's wounded pride spoke louder than his heavy conscience. Fine, he said, taking his fighting stance. But this time, no games, no shouting, no audience, just you and me. No, Emily said firmly. With an audience, just like that day. I want everyone to see. Word spread quickly through the dojo. Within minutes, nearly every student had stopped training to watch the confrontation. Some even called friends, and soon a small crowd had gathered around the main mat. Emily pulled off her training jacket, revealing a simple black t-shirt underneath. Her body was clearly the result of years of dedicated training, every muscle defined but not overly so, creating a silhouette that balanced strength and agility. Bradley, on the other hand, looked more uncertain than ever. For the first time in years, he was entering a fight unsure of victory. Rules, he asked. Same as 15 years ago, Emily replied. Anything goes until someone quits or can't continue. Master Johnson tried to protest, but Emily silenced him with a look. Master, with all due respect, this is between him and me. The fight began with Bradley trying to use his size and reach advantage. He lunged with a series of quick punches, trying to push Emily toward the edges of the mat. But Emily wasn't playing around anymore. Her movements were precise and lethal. She dodged every attack and countered with calculated strikes aimed at specific points on Bradley's body. In less than 2 minutes, Bradley was panting and drenched in sweat. Emily, meanwhile, breathed steadily, as if she were warming up. "This can't be real," one spectator muttered. "She's toying with him." Bradley tried to change his strategy. He faked a high punch and then attempted to take Emily down with a sweep. But she jumped over his leg as if she'd predicted the move. While still in the air, Emily delivered a side kick that struck Bradley right in the solar plexus. He doubled over, struggling to breathe. 15 years, Emily said, keeping her distance as he recovered. 15 years of training every single day, thinking about this moment. Bradley straightened up with difficulty, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. You really dedicated your entire life to this?" he asked. "My entire life," she confirmed. "You destroyed my childhood, my confidence, my family. So I decided that if I was going to carry that pain forever, at least it would have a purpose." The audience was mesmerized. There was something almost theatrical about the confrontation, as if they were watching a play about justice and redemption. Bradley tried a few more attacks, but each was easily neutralized by Emily. She wasn't just winning the fight, she was giving a masterclass in dedication and perseverance. "Enough," Bradley finally said, raising his hands in surrender. But Emily didn't stop. She closed the distance quickly and took him down with a flawless arm lock. "I'm not done," she said, pinning him to the ground. "Emily, stop!" shouted Mrs. Harrison. "You've made your point." "Have I?" Emily asked, scanning the crowd around her. 15 years ago, everyone laughed when I fell. Today, I want to see if anyone will laugh at him." The silence was absolute. No one was laughing. If anything, many spectators looked uncomfortable. "See the difference?" Emily asked Bradley. "When you humiliated me, everyone thought it was funny. Now that I've humiliated you, no one's laughing. Do you know why?" Bradley, still pinned, managed to whisper, "Why?" "Because humiliation is never funny. It only seems that way when you're not the one suffering." Emily finally released him and stepped back. Bradley stayed on the ground for a few seconds, processing her words. When he finally stood, there were tears in his eyes. "I get it," he said. "My God, I get it. What I did to you was terrible." Emily studied his expression for a long moment. "And now?" she asked. "Now that you understand, what will you do with that understanding?" Bradley wiped his face with the back of his hand and looked around at the spectators. "I don't know," he admitted. "I never thought beyond this moment. I never considered the consequences of my actions." "Then it's time to start thinking," Emily said. Just then, a new voice joined the conversation. It belonged to an elderly man with a white beard and kind eyes, who had quietly entered the academy during the fight. "Emily," he said. "Emily Wilson!" Everyone turned to see who it was. Emily paled when she recognized his face. "Master Rodriguez," she whispered. The old man smiled, despite the tears forming in his eyes. "My girl," he said, opening his arms. Emily ran to him and threw herself into his embrace. It was her father, whom she hadn't seen in over 5 years. "Dad, what are you doing here?" she asked, openly crying now. "Mrs. Harrison called me," he explained. "She told me you were here, facing your past. I couldn't let you do it alone." Bradley watched the scene, confused. "Master Rodriguez?" he asked. "But I thought that I'd stopped training," Emily's father finished. "I never stopped. I just moved and shifted my focus." Master Johnson approached respectfully. "Master Rodriguez, it's an honor to have you here. I've heard so much about your work with underprivileged children in Tampa." "Work that began after that championship," said Master Rodriguez, looking directly at Bradley. "When I saw my daughter broken because of a child's cruelty, I decided to dedicate my life to teaching values alongside martial arts." Bradley felt the weight of those words like punches to his gut. "Master, I didn't know that—" "You didn't know?" Master Rodriguez interrupted. "Or didn't you care to know?" The question hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Bradley had no answer. "Dad, said Emily, still in her father's arms. "I did what I had to do. I proved my point." "Proved?" Master Rodriguez asked, stepping back slightly to look into his daughter's eyes. "And what exactly did you prove?" Emily hesitated. For the first time since entering the academy, she seemed uncertain. I proved I'm stronger than him, that I won." "Won?" her father repeated. "Emily, my dear, you spent 15 years of your life preparing for 2 minutes of fighting. 15 years that could have been used to build something positive, something to help others. How is that a victory?" Her father's words struck Emily in a way no physical blow ever could. She looked around, seeing the faces of the spectators, seeing Bradley still on the floor, seeing her own life through a new perspective. "But Dad, he destroyed me. He destroyed our family." "He was a child doing a terrible thing," Master Rodriguez said. "But you chose to let that action define the rest of your life. You chose to carry anger instead of growing beyond it." Bradley slowly stood and approached father and daughter. "Master Rodriguez," he said, his voice strained, "I can't undo what I did. I wish I could, but I can't. All I can do is ask for forgiveness and try to be a better person from now on." Master Rodriguez studied Bradley's face for a long moment. "Forgiveness isn't something you ask for, young man. It's something you earn through your actions. And change isn't a promise you make, it's daily work you do." "Tell me what to do," Bradley said. "Tell me how I can fix this." "I can't tell you," Master Rodriguez replied. "That's something you must figure out for yourself. But I'll give you a hint. Start by helping others who've gone through what my daughter has." Emily looked from her father to Bradley, processing the words she'd just heard. "Dad, are you saying I wasted 15 years of my life?" "I'm saying you turned a wound into a prison," he answered gently, "but it's never too late to turn a prison into a key." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The academy was completely silent. Even the sound of equipment had stopped, as if everyone was holding their breath. "Emily," Bradley said hesitantly, "I know I have no right to ask, but could you teach me?" "Teach you what?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "To be a better person, to use strength to build, not destroy, to do something that honors all the pain I caused." Emily looked at her father, seeking guidance. Master Rodriguez simply smiled and gave a slight nod. "That decision is yours, my daughter." Emily took a deep breath and looked at Bradley. There was something different in her eyes now. The anger had been replaced by something more complex, a mix of exhaustion, relief, and perhaps the beginning of what might become compassion. "There's one condition," she said finally. "Anything," Bradley replied immediately. "You come with me to Tampa. We'll work with the underprivileged kids my father trains. You'll see what it's like to be on the other side, to protect instead of attack." Bradley nodded vigorously. Yes, I'll do that. "And you'll apologize to my mother in person." Bradley swallowed hard. Facing Emily's mother would in some ways be harder than any physical fight. I will," he said. "And there's one more thing," Emily continued. "You'll help me tell our story to others. Children who are mistreated, parents who don't know how to handle aggressive kids, anyone who can learn from our mistakes." Bradley felt a strange mix of fear and hope growing in his chest. You really believe I can change?" Emily looked at him for a long moment before answering. "I spent 15 years believing you were a monster. Today I learned you're just a human who made terrible choices. And humans can learn, can grow, can change." Mrs. Harrison, who had stayed quiet throughout the conversation, finally stepped forward. "Emily," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "can you forgive me too, for raising a son who caused so much pain?" Emily looked at the older woman and saw in her the same pain she had carried for so long. "Mrs. Harrison, you don't need to carry the guilt for his actions, just as he can't carry the guilt for the consequences I chose." "But I failed as a mother," said Mrs. Harrison, tears streaming down her face. "You did the best you knew how at the time," Emily replied, "and it's never too late to do better now." It was then that Master Johnson approached the group. "Master Rodriguez," he said, It would be an honor if you'd consider teaching some classes here at the academy. I think we could all learn much from your methods. Master Rodriguez smiled. It would be my pleasure, but on one condition. The classes must be open to any child in the community, regardless of their family's financial situation. Agreed, Master Johnson said immediately. Emily looked around and saw something unexpected, hope, on the faces of the onlookers, in Bradley's posture, in the eyes of her own adoptive mother, Mrs. Harrison. Dad, she said to Master Rodriguez, I think I finally understand what you've been trying to teach me all these years. And what's that, my daughter? That true victory isn't about defeating your enemy. It's about turning your enemy into an ally. Bradley looked at her with a gratitude he'd never felt before. Emily, I promise I won't waste this chance. Don't promise me, she said. Show me. In the months that followed, the lives of everyone involved changed dramatically. Bradley temporarily closed his private academy and traveled to Tampa with Emily and Master Rodriguez. There, he worked daily with children who had suffered bullying, abandonment, and domestic violence. At first, many were afraid of him because of his size and intimidating appearance, but gradually, as Bradley learned to use his strength to protect rather than intimidate, the children began to trust him. One such child was an 8-year-old boy named Ethan, who had been expelled from several schools for aggressive behavior. Ethan reminded Bradley of himself as a child, big for his age, prone to solving problems with his fists. Why do you want to help me? Ethan asked during one of their first training sessions. Bradley knelt to meet the boy at eye level. Because I used to be like you, and someone very special taught me we can choose to be different. What if I can't change? Then we keep trying until we do, Bradley replied. And if it takes too long, we ask for help. And if it's still hard, we don't give up. Emily watched these interactions from afar, amazed by the transformation unfolding before her. The arrogant and cruel man she had faced at the academy had given way to someone patient, kind, and genuinely concerned with the children's well-being. But the change wasn't easy or quick. There were moments when Bradley lost his patience, moments when his old arrogance resurfaced. On one occasion, he shouted at a child who was being particularly difficult, and the little girl ran off in tears. Emily found him later, sitting alone in the academy's courtyard, his head in his hands. I'm a failure, he said. I can't change. I'm still the same terrible person. That's not true, Emily replied, sitting beside him. Change isn't an event, it's a process, and processes have ups and downs. How can you be so patient with me? He asked. After everything I've done? Emily thought about the question for a long moment before answering. Because I finally realized that holding on to anger is like gripping a hot iron, hoping someone else gets burned. The only person I was hurting was myself. And now, have you forgiven me? Forgiveness isn't a feeling, Bradley. It's a decision. And it's one I make every day, every time I choose to see you for who you're becoming, not who you were. Bradley looked at her with an expression of admiration and gratitude so pure it was almost childlike. I'll never be able to thank you enough. You don't have to thank me, Emily said. You just have to keep being the person you're striving to be. 6 months later, they returned to Master Johnson's academy. But this time, they came as partners, with a joint plan to transform the place into more than just a martial arts school. The first change was the creation of a free program for children in the community. Any child who wanted to learn martial arts could participate, regardless of their family's financial situation. The second change was the introduction of mandatory lessons on values and ethics. Every child training at the academy learned not just fighting techniques, but also respect, compassion, and social responsibility. The third change was the most radical. Once a month, the academy held sessions where children who had been bullied could share their stories. Bradley and Emily shared their own experiences, showing that it was possible to overcome trauma and find healing. During one of these sessions, a 12-year-old girl named Emma raised her hand. "Uncle Bradley," she said, using the affectionate nickname the children had given him, "how can I forgive someone who hurt me really badly?" Bradley glanced at Emily before answering. They had developed a system where each complemented the other's responses, offering a more complete perspective. "Emma," he said, "forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't matter. It means choosing not to let that person keep controlling your life through the anger you feel." Emily added, "And remember, forgiving isn't something you do for the person who hurt you, it's something you do for yourself, to set yourself free." Emma nodded, processing their words. "But what if the person who hurt me hasn't changed? What if they're still cruel?" "Then you protect yourself," Emily replied. "Forgiving doesn't mean putting yourself in danger. It means letting go of the anger without exposing yourself to harm." These sessions became legendary in the community. Parents brought their children from distant neighborhoods to participate. Teachers recommended the academy to troubled students. Psychologists referred young patients to the program. But perhaps the most touching moment came 2 years after Bradley and Emily's initial confrontation. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the academy was packed with families watching a student demonstration. The children were not only showing off their technical skills, but also performing short skits about conflict resolution. At the end of the presentation, Bradley stood up to give a speech. He looked at the audience, saw Mrs. Harrison in the front row, saw Master Rodriguez and Master Johnson chatting animatedly, and saw the dozens of children who had gone through the program. 2 years ago, he began, I was a very different person. I used my strength to intimidate, my skill to humiliate, my position to belittle others. The audience was completely silent. Then I met someone who showed me the reflection of who I really was, and that reflection was terrible. He paused, searching for Emily in the crowd. She was leaning against the back wall, smiling encouragingly. But that same person, instead of using my weakness to destroy me, chose to use it to teach me. She turned my greatest defeat into my greatest opportunity for growth. Bradley took a deep breath before continuing. Today, I want to announce that this academy will no longer be known solely as Johnson Martial Arts Academy. From now on, it will be called the Johnson Parker Martial Arts Academy, in honor of the woman who taught us that true strength lies in lifting others up, not tearing them down. The audience erupted in applause. Emily at the back of the room was openly crying. Master Rodriguez walked over and hugged her. "Proud of you, my child," he whispered. "You turned wounds into wisdom." But the night's surprises weren't over yet. As the applause died down, an unexpected person stood up in the audience. She was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and gentle but tired eyes. She leaned on a cane and walked slowly. Emily froze when she recognized her. "Mom," she whispered. Rachel Wilson had traveled from Tampa to attend the presentation. It was the first time mother and daughter had seen each other in over 3 years. "Emily," Rachel said, her voice thick with emotion, "I needed to come here in person to see what you've built." Emily rushed toward her mother and hugged her carefully, mindful of her fragile condition. "Mom, how did you know?" "Mrs. Harrison called me," Rachel explained. "She told me about the work you and Bradley are doing together. I needed to see it for myself." Rachel looked around the academy, taking in the decorations celebrating values like respect and compassion, watching children of all ages and socio-economic backgrounds playing together. "You turned your pain into something beautiful," she told Emily, "something that's helping others." Emily was crying too hard to speak. Rachel then turned to Bradley, who had approached respectfully. "Bradley," she said, "Mrs. Harrison told me about your transformation, about how you're dedicating your life to undoing the harm you caused." Bradley knelt before Rachel, uncaring of who was watching. "Mrs. Wilson, I have no words to express how sorry I am. I destroyed your family. I hurt your daughter. Stop," Rachel interrupted gently. "You were a child who did a terrible thing. But look around. Look at all these children who are being protected, educated, and loved because of the work you two are doing together." She paused, locking eyes with Bradley. "You turned your mistake into a mission, and for that, I can forgive you." Bradley broke down in tears. 15 years of guilt, 15 years of self-loathing, 15 years of regret, finally found resolution in those simple words. Rachel turned back to Emily. "And you, my daughter, taught me that even the deepest wounds can become sources of healing for others." The audience watched the scene in emotional silence. Many of the adults present were openly crying, moved by the display of forgiveness and redemption they were witnessing. Master Rodriguez approached the group and placed his hands on Emily and Bradley's shoulders. "You've taught me something I thought I already knew," he said. "That the best lessons come not from our successes, but from how we handle our failures." Mrs. Harrison also joined the group, hugging Rachel as if they were young again. "Rachel, I missed you so much," she said. "Our friendship shouldn't have ended because of our children's mistakes." "No," Rachel agreed, "but maybe it needed to end so it could come back stronger." That evening, after the performance, everyone gathered at Mrs. Harrison's house for dinner. It was the first time in 15 years that the two families had been together again. During the meal, Ethan, the 8-year-old boy Bradley had helped in Tampa, asked a question that took everyone by surprise. "Uncle Bradley, do you still get angry sometimes?" Bradley laughed, wiping tomato sauce from the boy's face. "I do, Ethan. The difference is, now I know what to do with that anger." "What do you do?" "I stop, take a deep breath and ask myself, will this anger help me solve the problem or make it worse? And if the answer is it'll make it worse, then I find a better way to handle it," Bradley replied. "And if I can't figure it out alone, I ask for help." Ethan nodded seriously, as if memorizing a very important lesson. "What about you, Aunt Emily?" the boy asked. "Do you still get sad sometimes thinking about what happened?" Emily looked at Bradley before answering. "I do, Ethan. But now, when I feel sad, I remember all the children we're helping. And that turns the sadness into determination. Determination to do what? To make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else." The conversation continued late into the night, with the children asking deep questions and the adults sharing their experiences and lessons learned. Around midnight, as everyone was getting ready to leave, Rachel pulled Emily aside. "Sweetheart, I need to apologize for something." "What, Mom?" "For letting my own anger and sadness keep me from supporting you the way you needed. I was so focused on my own pain that I couldn't see you were suffering even more." Emily hugged her mother. "Mom, we were both doing the best we could at the time. Maybe. But now I can do better. And I want to be part of what you're building here." "What do you mean?" Rachel smiled. "I've been thinking about moving back here. There's so much work to be done, and I still have a few lessons to teach." Emily felt a joy she hadn't known in years. Her family was coming together again, but this time in a healthier and stronger way. The end of the story. Now tell me, what did you think of this story of transformation and forgiveness? Do you believe Bradley will be able to maintain his change? And Emily, did she make the right choice in choosing forgiveness over revenge? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. If the story touched you in any way, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.